My name is Alex Andrews, and I'm the founder of a very small app company called Ten Kettles. So me and Patch here, we make apps for music education and training. Something interesting happened a few months ago I wanted to talk briefly about before we jump into the interview. I had one of my users of an app called hearEQ, which is ear training for EQ. He emailed me and said, he really liked using the app. It was really useful in his studies at Berklee, and he just thought it was great, but it was missing something, and this was pretty bold. He said, it's missing my music baked into it. So he thought his music that he had written and recorded should be packaged with the app. Because there are, a bunch of built-in tracks in hearEQ, and he thought his should be part of those. So I opened the attachment, and I wasn't really sure what to expect, and it was good. Kind of anything that anyone records with heart and really kind of puts himself into it is going to be good, but it was also recorded really well, and the songwriting was just really kind of refined, and I was like, you know what, this could go into hearEQ. But I wanted to do something different because this fellow's name is Kaden Thrower, and we're going to be talking to him in a little bit. But what I wanted to do, while also putting his music into hearEQ, is I wanted to do this interview. I wanted to talk to him about not just how he wrote the song, but also about why he chose to go to school for music, what his life is like as a pretty active musician, and his path from being when he was just a really young kid realizing this is what he wanted to do, to now where he's kind of doing it in a lot of ways. I wanted to hear all about that. So we're going to have that chat. And the release of this video coincides with his song, City Line, being packaged into hearEQ and released today. So if you already have hearEQ, you just update it and his track will come in there. If you don't, you can get it, just search for hearEQ, it's all one word, on the App Store, and his music will be in there now too, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, we're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk about not just the song, his path, but also we got into some interesting stuff like, there's a sort of spectrum between the classic kind of gigging musician and the new social media musician. And a lot of people coming up sort of find themselves in that spectrum. And we chatted a little bit about that amongst a whole bunch of other things. I really enjoyed it. So before we jump into that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ten Kettles for apps. We'll start with Waay. So Waay, I used to teach a lot of theory in person as I was teaching guitar, and I loved it because I could take this amazing thing, which is music theory, and bring it to people where they were, make it applied, make it practical, make it really kind of focused on songwriting. And Waay is basically taking that curriculum that I developed after years of in-person teaching and bringing it to the next level. So there's a whole bunch of short videos teaching different concepts, interactive exercises, and then a new thing which I just added is a whole bunch of memory retention tools, because this stuff is a million times more useful if you remember it, and there's a whole bunch of that stuff in there now. So that's Waay. There's hearEQ, which is ear training for EQ. You can, an equalizer is both the most sort of like common and also underused tools out there, whether you're a live musician or a recording musician, or you're just trying to make your stereo sound really good. Understanding, what does it mean to turn up 1,000 hertz or to turn down 500 hertz in kind of an intuitive, qualitative sense. That is what hearEQ is about. And then BeatMirror. So I think practicing with a metronome is so valuable for developing precision and discipline, and also learning to listen while you play, which I think is so important. But it really matters what happens when you turn off the metronome. Can you keep that timing? Can you keep that discipline as you play without a metronome? So BeatMirror listens to you play and tells you how you're doing. Are you speeding up? Are you slowing down? They can give you visual feedback too, to give you a hint to kind of get back to tempo. So I actually have a whole tutorial on that I'll link to. And then the last one's WaayFinder. So it's a utility where, let's say you're writing and you've got this great snippet of a melody, a few notes, but you kind of get stuck and you want to know what key am I in. If you're still kind of developing your own knowledge of sort of keys and scales, WaayFinder's a great support for that. So you can plug in a couple notes and it'll tell you all the keys and modes that fit. Yeah, it's a lot of fun too. So that's that. Let's get into the interview with Mr. Kaden Thrower. Okay, so here we go. Interview with Kaden Thrower. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So we're going to start with just a really quick bio. Give me your name, how old you are, where you live, and what you do.
My name is Kaden Thrower. Like you said, I'm 20 years old, and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm a singer-songwriter.
Okay, fantastic. Now, so 20-year-old singer-songwriter, when did you realize that music was what you wanted to do? Was it recently, or was it when you were really young?
It happened super, super young. So, pretty much since I could, hear music and recognize that it was music, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I'm obsessed with this. I don't want to do anything else. So from a very, very young age, I really loved music, and I told my parents that's what I'm going to do. And they said, okay, you can be a doctor who sings sometimes. And I said, no, I don't want to. I want to be a musician. And they didn't believe me for a long time until I was like a preteen, and I tried to prove myself to them, and they said, okay, fine. Whatever, we'll support you.
Okay. And then how did you do that? How did you prove yourself there? Was it had you started performing then, or what did music look like when you were that age?
Yeah, I had started performing then, and I had already been playing guitar for about 5 years when I was 12, and moved on to drums and bass, and just didn't do anything productive other than music. So they were like, okay, you can probably do it, and also we can't stop you. So, yeah, so I just sort of stuck with it, and proved myself by getting better and playing and doing it and getting out there and meeting people and not letting them do the work for me so that I could prove that I could do the work myself.
Right. Okay. So kind of a bird's eye view. So what I'm thinking of is there's a lot of people who are going to be, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in high school, and they're like, I want to do something with music, but I don't know what that looks like. I think a lot of people might not know what that path really is, because it's not like they teach you in high school how to be an independent musician or whatever else. That's not really on the curriculum in a lot of places. So from a bird's eye perspective, what did your kind of getting out there journey look like from that age of 12 to now? What were the stops along the way?
So I started playing in bands at organizations. The first one I went to was a place called Rock and Roll High School, and they put us into a band, and we started playing gigs it was 2 months or something. So we would practice once a week for an hour, and then we would play gigs every 2 months. And I was too scared to sing on stage. And then the more I did it, we didn't have a singer, so I was sort of put in the position, and then I got over that fear. And then I just moved on to another school called School of Rock, that let me have more opportunities. So instead of practicing once a week for an hour, we would practice 2 times a week for 3 hours, something like that. And then I had a lot more gig opportunities. So when I was, when you're 12 and you're a kid, people don't really care that much if you're super good. There are times I know that we were playing and it was just so awful. And the only reason anybody in the crowd had smiling faces was because we were 12 and we were obviously having fun. But I think that if you get out there and you do it while you're young, one, you can get over that hump of scary. And then it's also okay, I know how to do this a little bit more, while people aren't expecting that much of you. So I think that, that's the way to get out into it, is to do it, whether you're doing it in person or whether you're, recording yourself and posting things on whatever, and then meeting people through that. just like saying, okay, I'm going to try and make this a little bit of a community thing so I can just put myself into the music scene, because it really is not like a direct path. It's really like we have no idea what to do. So I like music, right? And then it's like, oh, okay.
Right. So a big part of the path for you was sort of, okay, you said you worked for rock and roll, or played with Rock and Roll High School and then School of Rock, and really it was just about playing, but playing in a community. And it sounds like a lot of opportunities, booking gigs, all this stuff, which, as you get better, it can be kind of straightforward, but when you're 12, I mean, that's a lot to kind of organize. So having that all worked out and letting you focus on just developing your craft. That seems like a fantastic path. And then, so School of Rock was the last stop we mentioned. Now you are in school for music. And what's the name of the school you're at now?
I go to Berklee Online.
Okay, Berklee Online. And then from School of Rock to Berklee, like what was in between, or was it straight through?
There was a pandemic. So I left School of Rock and did gigging on my own. And then like a few months later, COVID hit. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take this time to really like focus on learning and getting better. Instead of focusing on, oh, what's a new song that I can add to the set list? It's like, okay, how can I make myself better? And then I realized, oh, okay, I don't have the tools on my own to make myself better. And there's so many great resources online and on YouTube. But I noticed as a self-taught musician, I had all these little gaps of knowledge. So like there was a big gap there that was noticeable when I was trying to do my own thing and not just like copy other songs or cover other songs.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that's interesting. So because I was going to ask about lots of musicians don't go to music school, right? And it seems a big ingredient of your of your path to before the pandemic was community, and for you was going to music school about just the school, or kind of back to that idea of community again?
I think, yeah, it was definitely a big part of it was the community. The main drive for going to school was the information. But the community has been very, very useful. So that was just sort of like an added plus.
Right. Okay, cool. No, I think, we've talked before, and one thing which came up was this idea of, okay, there's sort of a spectrum now for being a musician between, your social media musician and your sort of classic, gigging musician, since there have been venues and time, there has been the gigging musician. And now people kind of find themselves, either on either end of the spectrum or somewhere in the middle. Where do you fall in that spectrum?
I am definitely like a more classic musician who should probably be more of a social media musician. But yeah, I don't naturally gravitate towards that kind of thing.
And do you feel like you're missing out by not, doing more of the social media angle, like staying in your comfort zone, doing gigs, or do you think, there's real value in doing gigs, and I'm just not drawn to the social media? Like, what do you think?
I think that I'm definitely in some ways missing out, but if it works out for me another way, then who cares? But I could definitely see myself going more into social media if I can figure out a balance of how to stay true to what I naturally want to do and be able to put that on social media.
And then do you think that the social media, by putting songs on there, and what do you think the pressure is there to maybe pull you away from the songs you'd prefer to do?
Yeah. I guess since, with TikTok and Instagram, you're just scrolling. And so it's like, okay, is this gonna impress me in a second. No, I'm gonna scroll. And so sometimes the focus for me becomes less on music and more on, camera angles and lighting and whether the song is super popular and if I'm staying true to this song enough for people to be interested in it. That, just that kind of thing. It's like that, I think is probably a me thing to a degree. Like the best people on social media, in my opinion, really make me feel like I'm not watching. I'm like, they're just right there.
Right.
And I don't know how to do that. So, yeah.
Huh. Yeah, you kind of wonder what, if this were, you transport musicians from, 10 plus years ago to now and the choices they would have made. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. Like,
Right.
yeah, okay. So a good question is, so as a gigging musician, the finances are different than as a social media musician. So how do you make money as a musician?
I do a lot of busking, and then as you play more gigs in the area, and your rate gets higher, then that can sort of be at least more equivalent to the rate that you ask everybody for. So like if you get one gig pays you $250 for an hour and a half or something, or 2 hours, then it's like, okay, well, I got paid that last time. I'm gonna ask for a rate of 200 every time, So
Right.
Not being too like passive, but not being too aggressive, I think is how I make the money that I do with gigging, and then also just playing out on the street as much as possible in high walking traffic areas is a super good way of making money. It's not always the same, but works.
Cool. Okay. Right on. Okay, so now let's fast forward a bit. So you're 20 now. Let's jump forward 10 years, and Kaden Thrower wakes up at 30, and he's happy. What does that look like? What does success look like in 10 years? It can be anything.
I would love to wake up and have that anxiety of having a show later that night and just like, okay, that's what I'm thinking about. I like it to a degree. So whether that show is to a whole crap ton of people or just enough people to support myself and people around me, then that's enough to make me happy. If I can play a gig and make music that I'm proud of, that would be the ideal situation.
Yeah, and have it be like financially sustainable, but that kind of just as like a box to be checked. But then once that box is checked, then you can focus back on the thing that matters.
Exactly. I don't need luxury. I just need a place to live and some food.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Cool. So let's go to City Line. So when this video comes out, your track is going to be part of hearEQ. It's going to be one of the built-in tracks. And as I said in the intro, the reason how we connected is you use hearEQ as the ear training tool for EQ. And you sent me an email saying, I really like it, but what it really needs is my music as one of the built-in tracks. And it was bold. And I was like, okay, let's listen to this track. And it was good. And I liked it. And I was like, no one's ever been like, here's a track, use this, and me being like, oh, I like it, in that way. I mean, like, people send me music, and it's a lot of times fantastic, but this was just such a great pairing for hearEQ. So I want to talk about that track a little bit. So I'm going to play some of it now, just the beginning. You've probably heard this before.
A few times, yeah.
It's never been black and white.
There were times we spent losing our minds. Yeah, you said earlier on, wrote down, that you were, when you were younger, you were too scared vocally to kind of go out there with, I think it was either Rock and Roll High School or School of Rock, and you hear this, and it's just fantastic. So what a wonderful path to land you with a voice like that. It's really great. So tell me a little bit about how you wrote that song. What came first? The melody, the chord progression, the feeling. How did it start?
That one started with the chorus, like even far across the city line, and I was like, I think it was the whole line of even far across the city line, you and I could live a really good life. And I was like, oh, okay, that's catchy. I like that. And so I like ran over to my little music room and tried to come up with a guitar part. And so I came up with the chords and wrote pretty much everything off of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. And so I sat down with the guitar to figure out the chords, and you do something. I'm thinking of a Bob Dylan song, and got quite a few that do a similar thing. Is you have the same chord progression, whether it's the verse or the chorus. And I think in our last chat you said the bridge was different.
Yeah.
Now that's pretty unique. So what led you to just say, you know what, I'm going to stick with this progression all the way through because it works, right?
Yeah. I think that I like to, even though I've been playing guitar for a long time, my voice has always been like my main instrument. And
right.
So I liked the chord progression and wanted to use it as a foundation to have melody with my voice on top of it.
Right.
And so I wanted to take it into all of its different places through the melody instead of having, I think that if I were to make the melodic changes that I did with also changing the chord progression, it might have been a little bit more abrupt for every section.
Right.
And especially with like just me and an acoustic guitar, that abruptness couldn't be well supported.
Yeah, so the guitar there is the sort of the constant, and then it gives you a bit of a foundation that you can be more creative with that vocal line, which is a great one. Cool. So going on with theory, because obviously one of the, I would say Ten Kettles, one of the main apps is about teaching applied music theory. And I know from my writing, the way that theory kind of comes up is oftentimes, you just come up with a snippet of a melody or maybe a couple chords, and you kind of feel it out as much as you can. And then for me, and I do find for a lot of people, at some point you kind of hit a block, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know I've got 3 chords and it sounds fantastic, but I don't know what the next one's going to be, and it's just not coming. And that's where I turn to theory and say, okay, what key am I in? What are some chords that could work? Try them out, and it's probably going to be one of those, which sounds fantastic. And if not, it's at least sped me along that path. Is that similar to your experience, or how does theory play a role in your songwriting?
Yeah, absolutely. That's like pretty much my exact experiences.
Okay.
I like learning about it outside of writing, and then when I need it, I use it, but I don't approach it with theory. I just have that basis, and then if I need something, like if I'm lost, then I'll start using music theory, consciously. Or another thing is that if I have something like complete, but I don't think that it's interesting enough, or I want to add something a little bit extra, then I'll start using theory for like extended chords and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's almost just like a tool set of like you're gonna walk into that forest on your own, and if at some point you want to pull out the map, you pull it out a little bit, you check where you are, and then you keep going. I like that a lot, and it seems like a good way to keep it authentic too, because then
Absolutely.
you are deciding what sounds good, right? And I feel like as musicians, like it's our judgment, which is the musical part, right? And if we can use tools for that, whether it's an instrument or theory or whatever else, then that's just going to help it along. Cool. So for people who are using hearEQ, so if you get it today, when this video comes out, it's Kaden's song is going to be one of the built-in tracks, so you can practice your EQing with his tune, and it's a great one. So you'll be listening to it over and over and over again, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Cool. So we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but I kind of want to close with it as well, because I think it's really important. Is those people who have that same love that you do, and maybe haven't found that community to help guide them along. Maybe there's not one of these really great, schools that you mentioned in their area. What would you recommend to them as like the foundation for how to take that passion and maybe some of the songs they've written, and like we said, it's not really a linear path, but still how can they take that forward?
Yeah, so I think you can try and go the in-person route and really just try and meet people, go out to local shows. If you see any restaurants that say live music tonight at 7:30, go and see it and talk to them afterwards, or throw them $2 and give them a smile and come back to their next gig, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I remember you." And so you can do that and just sort of make connections, meet people, maybe start playing with people, or just ask for their advice. But that's scary, definitely. So I can see how that's not always the best way for someone to go. But without that, using social media is super powerful, even if you're just trying to meet people in person. I know that there are like apps like I don't know Vampire or Vamper, or I don't know what it is, but it's like Tinder for musicians in your area. So like you see a producer and whatever, using things like Twitter or like Craigslist or like Facebook groups, and finding people through there.
Craigslist and Kijiji were always my, well, not always, but a bit of big starting point for bands for me as well. It was just so simple, and you just you meet them, you filter based on replies who you think is going to be a good fit, and then it's fantastic.
Right, exactly. And then if you don't want to do that yet, you don't want to meet people yet, you sort of want to hone your craft and more like introverted, I would say try and figure out how you can record your music, and whether that's self-recorded or you go into a studio and you do it, figure out an arrangement and go out and do it. Right. I think the best way to get into the music scene is to figure out what you are decently comfortable with, and then do it. Right.
Okay, so figure out your strengths, go and build that in-person community if you can, maybe an online community, and then record some stuff, get it down. Okay, that's great. Now, can you give just to kind of get a taste of your style a little bit too? Can you give us 3 songs that you think everyone should be listening to right now?
Yeah. So I've been listening to, I don't usually listen to like instrumentals, but I've been listening to Playing God by, man, I know that I'm going to say this wrong, so I'm going to say it either way. Polyphia.
Okay.
And it's just like, that song's awesome. I've been listening to their other stuff too, and it's great. And then I heard Selfish Soul by Sudan Archives on the radio, and that was an awesome song. And then my favorite artist is Phoebe Bridgers, and Garden Song is lyrically a great song and also musically.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll put links to those. And how can people find you? I know you said you're more of a classic musician in terms of gigging rather than social media, but how can people kind of get in touch and hear your music?
Yeah, my handles on all social media is just at Kaden Thrower. On TikTok, I think there are like 3 R's. But if you write at Kaden Thrower, you'll probably be able to find me.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks so much for chatting. That was fantastic. And we got through a lot of really useful stuff. So I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks again. And I'm Alex Andrews. You can find me on Twitter at 10 Kettles. And hearEQ, Waay, and BeatMirror are all on the App Store. And hearEQ now has one great new built-in track.
All right. Thank you.
All right. All right. So see you later.
All right. See ya.